Do you love TV shows? We do too. Hello everyone, I'm Jeff.
And I'm Anna, and we're the hosts of We Judge a Show by Its Pilot, a podcast hosted by us, a married couple with an endless love for TV.
Whether you're searching for a new favorite series or ready to revisit an old classic, we're here to guide you through an infinite world of TV shows.
Each episode, we watch and discuss the pilot for shows, while also sharing personal stories that parallel the storyline.
So if you're tired of endlessly scrolling and not sure what to watch next, tune in and let us do the searching for you.
We Judge a Show by Its Pilot. New episodes every Tuesday and Friday, wherever you get your podcasts.
Your new favorite show is just one click away. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our pod.
Hello. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. All right, so when we were driving home just now, we just went and had dinner with my mom. We had had some Roman's Cafe. It was very delicious.
Delicious.
We were listening to another podcast. We were listening to Girls Next Level.
Yes.
And it's funny because like we usually skip through the ads, but when I'm driving and it's on my phone, I'll just let the ads go through, especially when we're driving at night, traffic hour, all of that. I'm not going to be looking down at my phone. And I was listening to one of their ads, and they were talking about, we've all heard the term like red flags, green flags,
beige flags,
even yellow flags, like kind of, proceed with caution kind of things. Kind of got me thinking, and I guess it's relative to the show that we're talking about today, because it is about dating and relationships and marriage and being single. It's kind of about all of the stuff about relationships, so I guess it is on par. It got me thinking about like obviously we're married. I feel like I no longer have red flags unless it's very obvious of you're like stealing money from me or cheating or, something like serious.
Yes.
But when you're dating, I feel like some people have them, some people really don't. And that's interesting to me as well. But I was thinking about like what my red flags were when I was single, when I was dating, and what like my green flags were. I guess I never really thought about yellow flags. I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, I need the
definition.
The definition of each of the flags. So just funny. I don't even know if you know this, but one of our products, Westlaw, on cases and statutes, we have our checking system called KeySight. And it's red flag, yellow flag, red and white flag, blue and white stripe flag, and then we have like an orange symbol. But so that's become kind of in the vernacular, into the lingo these days. It just cracks me up because we've been using a red flag system for our cases and stuff since like the 90s. But so are you asking me?
Well,
and I want then you to tell me what mine are.
Well, what's funny is that one of my really big red flags that I used to have, it was something that I had decided on a really long time ago after I got out of a relationship. And what's interesting is that you technically had that same red flag when I met you, but I guess it's all relative to how you feel about the person, because I realized I was like, oh yeah, I remember so I was dating someone.
Okay.
She was a few years older than me. Big surprise. She was a few years older than me. And I would say I was like in my late 20s. She was in her early 30s. We were just maybe 5 or 6 years apart. And she had told me that she had never really been in a relationship before.
Okay.
And I mean, people have different definitions of a relationship. You say you've never been in a relationship, but then you kind of find out later, yeah, you have. You just didn't call it that. You just called it something else.
And you mean me?
Not you personally. Just like when people say that, a lot of times they're just like, well, it's like some people who are like, I've never been in a fight before. You're like, well, you were in this. They're like, oh, that doesn't count. It's like that kind of whole mentality. But I very quickly realized that, well, one, she wasn't completely honest about that, and I didn't understand why she would lie about it, about not being in a relationship. But also, there was something it was very clear that she had never really been in a real relationship, because I felt like I felt like our relationship, it was like I was in high school again.
God.
It was like it was one of those like, oh, it's very clear that you've never been in a relationship. You don't know anything about like picking your battles. You don't know anything about like compromise. You don't know anything about like, it was very clear. I'm like, oh no, like you really haven't been in a relationship before. And it was like, I mean, honestly, she was, like I said, she was like 5 or 6 years older than me. It was like I was dating a high schooler. It was like wow. I was dating someone who had like just moved out of their house or something like that. And it was very, I mean, it became a red flag. And by that, it became a huge turnoff. And I ended things with her. She was very upset about it. And I felt bad. But at the same time, I was like, no, I need to be with someone who's kind of on the same level of like experience as me, or at least like equivalent. And I remember when you and I first met and we first started like talking about our past and stuff. And I remember asking you about your relationships, and you were like, well, you told me, you were like, well, I'm going to be honest with you. I've never really been in a real relationship before. I remember my reaction, like, any other person, it would have been like, oh, well, maybe, but since I liked you so much, I was just like, oh, I don't care. I was just like, so my point was kind of what I was thinking is like, I guess a red flag it only really matters if you're not into the person as much, because I feel like if everyone has red flags, everyone has green flags, we all have our flaws, we all have our setbacks, and I think to judge someone solely on one thing isn't like the fairest thing in the world. And so it was just kind of like it's just something that randomly popped in my head. I was just kind of like, oh yeah, I remember like I had all these red flags and I had all these rules and I had all these lists in my mind of like what I want, what I don't want. But when you just find that person, you're just like not thinking about any of that. You're just like, oh, well, I found my person. It's just kind of.
I also think like you're right with that, because like I could have taken your like going silent and semi-ghosting at times, obviously, as a major red flag. Mm-hmm. Like there was something there. But again, like you said, I liked you. We were friends. But I always felt like there was something as to why you did that. Yeah. Because there would be times when we would just talk, and then all of a sudden it was like radio silent. Yeah. Like, and for no real reason. Mm-hmm. And so like I just was always like, there's something going on. Yeah. And I had to figure it out and talk to you about it. Right. So eventually we got there. But like someone else may have just been like, you know, okay, I'm never talking to him again. Right. So, because I remember one of the first times that you did, like, your first message back to me was like, I know you're probably really upset with me. Yeah. And I was like, well, yeah. So, but you know, it is. I think there are obviously major red flags that you cannot ignore. Right. I mean, you know, if there's like violence or like, I you know, I don't know what, but I mean, if there are other things that you can't ignore, you should not ignore them. Mm-hmm. But I think that there are some things that could be identified as a red flag that, you know, like you thinking my not having been in a serious relationship could have been something, but I just really hadn't met anyone I really liked enough to have gotten into a relationship. It ended up,
and what's funny is that when with that ex of mine, that was such a big deal because of how she acted. But I was just like, I mean, it really just depends on the person, because had she been just a more mature person that had never been in a relationship before, I would have never made that a red flag. You know what I mean? Right, because you've never been in a serious relationship before you met me, but there was nothing about you that made that any more or less obvious, if that makes any sense. Yeah. It wasn't like I was like, oh, you've really never been in a relationship. There was never any moment where I had that with you. So it was just kind of like, it really, I mean, and it's common. It's just, you know, it's different with different people, and it depends on the person. Do you have any, well, not obviously not now, but did you have any like major red flags other than the obvious when you were dating?
I'm trying to think, like, not really. Yeah. I mean, again, I know people probably are like, what, you know, but I don't think I ever went out with anyone long enough to realize they had a red flag for me.
Okay.
Other than we just realized we just weren't that interested in keeping the relationship going.
Gotcha.
Longer than it already had. Like 1 or 2 dates was enough to be like, it's all right.
Yeah.
Like, we're better off as friends. Like, because I
Gotcha.
think I've told you that is like any of the guys that I've ever gone out with, like on a date or two, I'm still like friends with.
Yeah.
Because there was no bad blood there. It wasn't long enough to develop any bad blood. But I mean, again, I don't see them or talk to them regularly, of course, but yeah. So
yeah.
What about you? Other than that one,
I mean, I feel like I had a bunch of them, but like every time like I try to think about it, I'm just like, it really just depended on the person. Like it really just kind of depended on, yeah. Cause I mean, like I could say like, if they were unemployed, that was kind of always like a red flag to me, but you don't know someone's situation until you get to know them. So it's like I couldn't just say like, oh, I'm not dating you because you don't have a job. Because like I don't know, maybe you just got fired, you're about to get another job, or stuff happens.
I think there's that.
Yeah.
But if they're not like actively trying to get another job,
right? But you don't really know that until you get to know them. So it's like, because they could just as easily lie and be like, oh yeah, I'm looking for a job, and like you don't know any different because you just met this person. It's not like y'all it's not like y'all are hanging out or you're seeing them all the time. And so you kind of just have to either
trust the process,
or just leave before things get too deep. And I probably should have done that more than one time when I met someone. But you know, like we've talked about before, I'm a hopeless romantic, and I'm in love with love, and I wanted to find that person, and I wanted to give everyone a chance because that's what I wanted in return. But I felt like until I really met you, I've never felt like I got that in return.
Well, I will say probably something that to me would be a red flag is like boasting about who they are right off the bat.
Right.
I mean, I think we've talked about that just one-on-one.
Yeah.
But like, I always feel like either guys or girls that talk about like how much money they have and how much their house is worth, or how much like their car is valued at, and like trying to be this like really rich person or something. I'm like, if you're really rich, like it will show in just who you are.
Right.
Like I don't need you to tell me that.
Well, and it's just the fact that people try to use that as a ploy to like be more attractive just kind of shows that like, well, one, first of all, anyone out there who is single and dating and using dating apps, if you're talking to someone and within very short amount of time they are dropping, oh, I make this amount of money, or I have this kind of car, or I live in this kind of neighborhood, they're full of shit. I mean, like they may have the nice house, they may have the nice car, they may have a nice job. That doesn't necessarily mean that they have money. And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand, because you can put a down payment on a house and pay the bare minimum on a mortgage. You can lease a car. You could have a nice job, and you can just lie about your income. I mean, like, that's just not, that's just something that you can, I don't know. I guess maybe being a guy, I guess like girls don't do that as much.
Well, correct.
I think men are more likely to do that, and I can say that I could say that as a guy. I feel like men are much more a need to have this bravado and this image of, somehow having money means that I'm more of a man, and it's very sad, but it's unfortunately a lot of women and people fall for it. And my whole thing is like, if a guy starts dropping that he makes money and in a short amount of time, just don't talk to him anymore, because he's full of shit.
Well, and I will attribute that a lot to probably some of the reasons that I don't think I've dated a lot is I think a lot of guys, they felt emasculated because I made more money than they did. And I'm not on the pod saying like I'm a millionaire or that I make a ton of money, but I do make a good living.
If you were a millionaire, I would not be working at George's right now.
Correct. But I was single until I was in my late 40s, until we got married. And so I took care of myself. I paid my bills, and did all the things all on my own. And there were a lot of guys who did not feel comfortable with that. And to me, I was always like, why? Like, I never got that, because I was just like, so would you rather me like be unemployed and just, living in a shack or something? I don't like that. Never made sense to me, but I was like, all right, like, bye. If that's scary to you for some reason, I don't understand. But yeah, so that to me is always, because I never talk about really how much I make or what I do, other than like I just say like I teach at law schools and but
I didn't fully know what you did for a living until we actually started dating, until I moved in with you, because I think by that point, by the time I first moved in with you, you were kind of done with your work travel. And then that fall when you started traveling again, I was like, I mean, by then I knew what you did for a living, but it was just like, at that point I was just like, oh, you have like a full-time. I didn't realize that you worked from home. I didn't realize that, like, I mean, it was just something that I just didn't.
Knew a little because I knew your sister, but you didn't know like in what capacity I knew her.
Honestly, in my dating history and my track record, you said you had a job. That was enough for me. Like I mean, honestly, I mean, like, I just had such a,
and I didn't ask you for like favors,
a consecutive lineup of women that I dated that didn't have jobs. And so it was just like, when you were like, I have a job, I'm gainfully employed, I was just like, that's all I need to know.
Yeah.
You have your own car, you have your own place. You're not going to be trying to part-time live at my apartment. And that was enough for me. So it really wasn't until we really started dating where I was like, by the way, what do you actually do? Like, what do you actually do for a living? Because I knew like you taught at law schools, but I didn't know that you like traveled around and went to various law schools. When you said you went on like work trips and stuff, I just never asked you, I guess. I don't know. But I found out later on. But yeah, when you told me you were employed, I'm like, that's enough. So that's enough for me.
Green flag.
All right. So we've been chit-chatting for a little bit. We are continuing February with short-lived TV shows, and this was one that you threw into the pot. And we kept calling it the wrong name, and it took me a minute to find it.
I kept saying Happiness,
which is a movie, but this is a TV show called Togetherness.
Yes.
And it's a cute little show. And before we get into our plot summary and all of our discussions that we have, Anna's going to give us some episode and series information.
All right. Togetherness. The pilot was called Family Day. Togetherness was an American comedy drama series that premiered on HBO on January 11th, 2015, and ended on April 10th, 2016, just before I met you.
Aww.
It was created by brothers Mark and Jay Duplass and their childhood friend Steve Zissis. These three men are New Orleans natives that attended Jesuit High School just down the street from where I went to high school. Mark Duplass is probably best known for portraying Pete on The League, but him and his brother Jay have written and or directed several films such as The Puffy Chair, Cyrus, and Jeff Who Lives at Home, which was filmed in New Orleans.
That's a really good movie.
And they also created another short-lived series called Room 104, which we actually watched that, but we kind of fell off of that one. Steve Zissis was the Duplass Brothers' childhood friend that co-starred in most of their films, but would go on to have his own acting career, appearing in Bad Milo, Rebel Ride, and Happy Death Day to You, where he played the dean and is featured in one of Anna's favorite scenes with Rachel Matthews.
Yeah.
The pilot was the blind scene.
Oh yeah.
The pilot was directed by the Duplass brothers and written by them and Zissis. The series revolves around a married couple, Brett and Michelle Pearson, who are currently struggling to connect after having a baby. While trying to figure out their marriage, they let Michelle's impulsive sister Tina and Brett's hapless best friend Alex move in with them. The cast includes co-creator Mark Duplass as Brett Pearson, Melanie Linsky as his wife Michelle, Amanda Peet as Michelle's sister Tina, co-creator Steve Zissis as Brett's best friend Alex, and later on the series would have recurring stars such as Peter Gallagher, Mary Steenburgen, and Kate Azelton, Mark Duplass's wife. Despite having a stellar cast and a well-written show, Togetherness never quite caught on and struggled in the ratings. Due to the series being on HBO and competing with other big shows like Game of Thrones, Silicon Valley, The Leftovers, Veep, and Girls, Togetherness never really stood a chance and was canceled after 2 seasons and 16 episodes. It's been later said that the way the show was produced was also too difficult to maintain, and you can currently watch the entire series on Max.
Speaking of Melanie Linsky, we got the new season of Yellow Jackets coming out in like a week or something like that. I just looked at the date. I'm like, oh, we are already in February, y'all.
Yeah, boy.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that. Was there something else I wanted to say? Oh, yeah. I didn't realize, kind of talking about like why we think that the show never caught on, with the ratings and stuff. But I'm now kind of looking at the era that it came out in. Yeah, a lot of really popular shows were on HBO at the time. I know I typed this out, but like I didn't fully. Sometimes when I type these things out, I kind of forget what I write, and then I don't really see it again until it's printed out in front of me. But yeah, like Game of Thrones, which 2015, that was like the biggest show on TV at the time. That was what everyone was talking about. I know because I worked at George's and I hadn't watched Game of Thrones at the time. Silicon Valley, which is one of my favorite shows at the time, and then Girls, which is one of your favorite shows at the time. So it was kind of...
Yeah, and I actually watched all of this show.
Oh, okay.
So I remember, like, I don't remember how it, quote unquote, ended in season 2, whatever the 16th episode was. I mean, I should go back and watch it to see what happened. If it like ended on a note that just could have ended the show, or if it was like it ended and then they just later decided not to do a season 3. So, yeah, I don't know why it never caught on. It was definitely the couple, the friend, the brother, kind of.
I mean, it was really funny, it was and cute. 30 minutes, super easy to watch. Yeah, I mean, who knows? Just one of those shows that maybe just bad timing, and because Mark Duplass, I mean, like the league had just ended, so this was his thing after the league. So maybe like he thought maybe the momentum of that would keep the show popular, but yeah, just couldn't compete with all those other big shows. All right, so the main plot is that the Brett and Michelle, they let Tina and Alex. Yeah. They let Tina and Alex move in with them. Obviously, they were a little bit more, I think maybe it seems like they were a little bit more like, you can stay with us as long as you like. But my question is, have you ever let someone stay with you and they kind of like overstayed their welcome, or they kind of like didn't leave?
Not exactly. So when I had moved to Seattle, my best friend from law school, Alex, had moved to Los Angeles. She actually lived in WeHo.
Okay.
And she was trying to take the bar and wasn't successful a couple of rounds. And like when she first moved out there, I think, and if she's listening, I don't know if she listens to the pod or not, I think her grandparents and her mom had like given her enough money so that she could focus on the bar and not really have to work. And so she studied for the bar for the fall, like for the like summer bar, found out in like October or something, she didn't pass it. So then they like helped her out a little bit more so that she could take the February bar and wait for the results, which usually come out later that spring. And then I think she wasn't successful again. So now we're talking, it's like spring of 2000. And I think her mom was like, okay, well, you need to get a job because you need to start like, or something.
Right.
Like, what is going to happen now? You haven't passed the bar. And I mean, they weren't mad. The California bar is extremely difficult. Many people have to take it multiple times. So it wasn't that, but she was living in a very expensive city, and, her mom was a single mom. And so I think her mom, I think she came to the realization that she couldn't live in Los Angeles any longer. And I knew she did not want to go back to Wisconsin, which is hilarious because she now lives there with her husband and her 2 kids. But I was, as I've talked about on the pod before, I was extremely lonely in Seattle. Like, I didn't have a lot of friends, and I hadn't joined the junior league yet, so I wasn't at that point. So I think she ended up staying in LA. I think she got like temp jobs because she really, really wanted to stay. Like, living in Los Angeles was her dream.
Gotcha.
And she was trying to do everything to stay. Like, I think at one point had like 2 roommates to help split the rent. But by, I think, like either fall of 2000 or early 2001, it just was not feasible. She wasn't, whatever job she had just wasn't enough to sustain herself in Los Angeles in the early 2000s. So I had just made the proposal of like her coming to stay with me. And it was really to just try to help her get back on her feet, like maybe try to find a job in Seattle. And so she probably stayed with me for about like 9 months. And then she moved in with someone that was needing a roommate, and she had found like a temp job downtown in Seattle like moved actually to live with this lady who lived closer to downtown. You saw where my apartment was.
Yeah,
it was
in the burbs.
It was way up north when I first moved out there. So it wasn't very conducive to driving to downtown Seattle, you know, on the regular basis. So that was really like the only real roommate I can think I had that wasn't like a college sorority sister or dorm roommate. But yeah, that was really to help her and try to get her back on her feet. And then she lived with that lady for a little while. And then I think she somehow found a new opportunity in North California in San Francisco. So she moved back to San Francisco. And
sorry, I caused that.
No, I'm yawning. This overcast weather is like killing me today. Then I think she moved in with a undergrad college roommate, and then she eventually met her husband, I think through mutual friends, and they are still together. And what's just funny is I think the cost of living in just Northern California, they lived, I'm going to totally get it wrong. I think it's Belmont, California, which is near like Silicon Valley, near like Palo Alto, all of like that very expensive part of, you know, the Bay Area. And they now live in an extremely beautiful house in Wisconsin with a swimming pool, 2 stories, like, and I kind of laugh at it now because, you know, she didn't want to go back to Wisconsin like right after law school, and that's where she ended up. And it's also funny because I don't think her husband initially wanted to move out there either. And I think he now looks back and is like, why didn't I do this like 5 years ago? Like, you know, like his mother lived in California and she was kind of older. So I know he felt obviously compelled to stay near his mother as well. So, but it all works out, you know, and so, you know, she was a good roommate. We had fun, and it was nice to have someone familiar and someone to go and do things with, go shopping, go to the movies, or go out to eat, and kind of help through that like transition time. Because like right after she moved out, I joined the Junior League of Seattle and sort of started expanding my little friend network there. Okay. What about you? Sorry, I talked a lot.
It's okay. I'm used to it. I'm just kidding.
I know. I talk a lot. Like Angela. This is me at dinner with my family.
Oh, no, you're not Angela. If you were Angela, we would not be together. I love Angela from Smosh, but no, not in a romantic. I could live with someone like that.
Gotcha.
Okay, so it's interesting because it's a continuation of a story that I told on the pod that I think I cut out. And it was when I think we were discussing people that we met off of online dating. Off of dating apps, I mean.
Oh, okay.
So this was the one where I went over to her apartment, and I didn't know until a little bit later that she was still living with like her, I would say, quote, ex-boyfriend, but I didn't know that until like later in the evening when we were hanging out, and we were caught in a compromising position, but we weren't about to do anything physical. It was just, he walked in and, okay, so I met this older woman on a dating app, and she, first of all, it was a younger picture of herself, which that there's nothing wrong with that. She was still an attractive woman. It was just in the back of my mind, I was just like, that was clearly taken when you were like probably the age that I was when we met, like, you know, probably a picture
20 years younger.
Yeah, and so
that's a red flag.
Yeah, so I was kind of like, okay, I was like, me, you know, maybe she wants to appear younger. There's nothing wrong with that. Like I was still young and naive enough to be like, you know what, I'm fine with that. But now, obviously, that would be a huge red flag. And we were hanging out. We had a good time, but she was wearing like a full zip up like hoodie, but she was only wearing like a bra underneath it.
Okay.
So the zipper was legitimately stuck on her jacket. She was trying to take it off so she could put on a t-shirt. And she went into the other room, but she couldn't get her jacket off. So she was like, hey, can you help me get this jacket off? And so her ex-boyfriend walks in right as I'm trying to take I'm trying to like get the zipper off. So it looks like, and she's only wearing a bra underneath. I swear we were not about to do anything. There's no reason for me to lie at this point. But it was just, I mean, if anyone walked in, they would think, if I walked in on that, I would be like, what the hell is going on? If you walked in on that, you'd be like, what the hell is going on?
Well,
so
yes.
Like, that part I was like, okay with. And so
But that was her ex-boyfriend.
That was her ex-boyfriend.
He was living with her.
Yes. And I think like supposedly he was like out of town or something. But at that point I was like, I think you were just, I don't know. It was such a long time ago. I don't remember every single detail. But so they were like fighting with each other, like, or not like physically fighting, but like arguing with each other. Like when I walked in, and when he walked in, they like started arguing with each other, and I was like, I think I'm gonna go. So the reason why I cut the story out was because I didn't tell the whole story, because it is a very long story, because that relationship didn't end right then and there.
Your relationship.
As it should have. It should have ended between me and her in that moment. I probably should have never talked to her again. But I didn't, and they got into this really big fight, and like, honestly, he was being very aggressive, and he was being very, I think there was I don't want to accuse anyone of anything, but I think there was maybe a little bit of abuse going on.
Do you still think he harbored feelings for her?
I think so.
In a bizarre, controlling way? Okay.
I think so. I think he knew that he had this hold over her because she had moved from another state. They had met online, and they had this really long-term relationship, and she moved to Louisiana to be with him.
Oh, okay.
So she didn't have anywhere else to go. So I think he knew that.
Gotcha.
Other than a few friends that she had made over the years of living there. And so even though I didn't know this woman, I was fearing for her safety, and I was like, hey, do you want to stay the night at my house tonight? That was when I was living in that house with my 3 roommates. 2 of them were in Florida. 1 was in a relationship, and he was always gone. So I pretty much had the house to myself for like a few days. I was like, come stay at my house for the night. Grab a bag, grab some clothes. Like I just didn't feel comfortable leaving her by herself, because he was like kind of like grabbing her wrist, and like he was just being very aggressive. And I don't think I'm like a savior or anything. I just like wouldn't have felt good leaving her by herself, even though like I barely knew this person. I'd maybe talked to her online for like a couple days. And I brought her back to my house, and she was like very upset, and she was like crying, and it was just, I felt really bad for her. Didn't really know her that well. And she stayed the night at my house, and then I had to go to work that next morning, and so I was like, just stay here, and then when I come back from work, I'll bring you back to the apartment, or bring you wherever you need to go. And so when I came home, she was still kind of like, well, I don't really have anywhere to go. And so I'm just like, what have I done? I was just like,
no.
I was kind of in the situation where like I felt really bad for her, but at the same time, I'm like, I work 35 hours a week. I'm a fry cook. I can't I can't take care of both of us. And so.
And you have other roommates that you haven't told about this.
Exactly. And so that was all going through my head. And so I was just kind of sitting there, I'm like, okay, well, I mean, I told her, I was like, I mean, we don't know each other. You can't stay here. And so I ended up bringing her back to that apartment. And then the next night, maybe the next night or maybe like that same night, she called me again and she was like really upset. And he had kind of like, he had taken all of her stuff and like put it outside and had like locked her out of the apartment. And so okay, so she had talked him into keeping her stuff at that apartment, and she was like, I'm going to go stay at this person's house until we can figure something out. She didn't tell me she had told him this. So she had all of her stuff at his apartment, and she came and stayed another night at my house. And I was like, okay, like, I don't think you can stay. I was like, I have roommates. Like, there's already 4 of us living in this house. Like, we have 2 dogs. I mean, it's just like, it was a little shotgun house. I was like,
I just met you.
And so she was just like, okay. And then I go to work again. I come home. All of her stuff is in my room.
Like all the stuff she said was at her place?
All of her stuff was in my room. And she was like, I don't have anywhere else to go. And I'm just like, all right, I guess I have to talk to my roommates. I was just like, I didn't even like, I was so young. I was so like wanting to be the good guy. I didn't want to be the jerk. And so I was just kind of like, okay, well, I guess you can stay here. I was just like, I don't know you. And then that ended up being a complete and total disaster. I seriously doubt she'll ever listen to this. And a little bit of I don't have a job and I don't have any money problem. And it was just it was maybe 3 weeks, something like that.
That's a long time.
Maybe 3 weeks until finally we had gotten into this, me and her had gotten into like this really big fight. And I was just like, I don't know you. I was just like, that's what I would always say. And I know that probably like got on her nerves or like maybe hurt her feelings sometimes, but I was just like, I don't know you. Like, we don't know each other. And then finally she was just like, I got a hold of one of my friends. He's going to let me stay with him. And I'm like, bye. I was like, I'll help you move in. And I did. I helped her move in, and we hugged, and that was that. And then honestly, like after that, like we stayed friends for a while just because there was no more like, we are not going to be together romantically. That was like established. And so I was just like, okay, when we ended up becoming friends and we ended up like hanging out and stuff. And I mean, I haven't seen her, talk to her in forever, but I mean, like that was probably the only real time, because I've let friends stay with me, but like when Chance and Tyler stayed with me and Blake, that they're family, so we were like, stay as long as you want, and we were like, stay as long as you need, and then Tyler ended up replacing me, so it was like that ended up working out.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's that is ultimately the reason why I cut that story out of the episode, because I only told the first part of the story, and I made it sound like I just left the apartment. And once I re-listened to that story, I was like, oh, that's not what happened. And so I was like, I need to cut that story out.
And that's not the end of the story.
I need to cut that story out. Yeah. All right. So, yeah, this episode, I knew this episode was going to be a long one. So, do you want to? Yeah. Okay. So so Family Day is the name of the episode, and it's all about they're going to the beach. I have so many memories of going to the beach with my family, and times that I mean, you and I have gone to the beach a couple times, but that's not really our thing. Do you have any significant memories of going to the beach with your family?
Oh yeah, I have like probably 3 major going to the beach stories. So probably the first is the summer of 1976, the summer that the movie Jaws came out.
Oh yeah.
We were in Pensacola, Florida, and My mom decided to take me, my brother, and my sister to go see the movie during that trip, and it scared us from going to the beach ever again. I'll never forget the next morning. My parents were really big on us getting up super early to beat the crowds, and we would go swimming really early. And I remember my mom woke us up and was like, "Do y'all want to go to the beach?" And the three of us stood there and we were like, "No."
Yeah.
Like, and she's like, "All right, I guess we'll go home." So we drove back to New Orleans, and we got back there early.
Wow.
Probably my next major memory of going to the beach would be spring break of 1987 when I turned 18 on the 18th. It was my golden birthday.
Aww.
And I asked my mom earlier that kind of February or so, it was a big deal in New Orleans when you were a senior in high school to go to Florida without your parents to go to spring break. So I had asked my mom if I could go because I wasn't going on the senior trip. So half of our class would go to spring break and half would go on the senior trip, which was to Mexico. And my mom wasn't going to let me go to Mexico. And so I was like, well, can I go to spring break to Destin? And she was like, fine. She was like, yes, but you have to pay for it. And so it was I want to say there were 5 of us, and actually one girl's mom came with us just to be the adult that got the condo, but she stayed in, she got the master and we slept all over the rest of the condo.
Gotcha.
So it was 6 or 7 of us that split the condo. But man, back in the 80s, a condo for the night was $100. Now it's $500 a night, and so I swear I was babysitting, I was mowing people's lawns, I was washing cars, I was doing anything to save money to go on this trip. And all I remember was on my 18th birthday, I sat on the beach. I had made myself a little sign that said, "It's my 18th birthday on the 18th." And guys and girls were all giving me cans of beer and wine coolers.
Awesome.
I had a whole little ice chest, and my drink of the time was gin and tonic. And so
Gross.
I know it's crazy.
I used to drink beer,
but
so I know.
But it was funny because we were talking about the Duplass Brothers, but that was when I met so many Jesuit guys and De La Salle guys, and guys from Brother Martin were there, and you would just meet so many people from New Orleans. And I just remember just sitting on my towel on the beach, getting all the booze, and we were just drunk for several days. And then probably my other favorite memory was going to the beach again to Destin with my friend Jennifer, who who lives near Biloxi.
Oh, yeah.
And her family would go every year. And I think I've talked maybe either to you about it or on the pod or maybe on the side, that we would stay in these cabins and they were right on the beach. And I just remember, I'm going to probably make it sound really horrible, but they were these cinder block shack things. And I remember there were maybe 10 of these sort of cabins. And I just remember the owner would talk about how construction or development companies would try to buy his land from him and he would refuse.
Oh, wow.
Because he always wanted to have a place that was affordable for families. Because, all the places now, they're so expensive.
Yep,
and
they are.
Those trips were so fun because we would play dominoes or we would play cards and we would grill out. And again, it was just fun times with your best friend and their family and just making memories. And we were probably pretty naughty meeting people on the beach and smooching and things like that with boys that we met. But so those are mine. What about yours?
I mean, I went to the beach plenty of times with my family and with friends, and I would say for the most part they were pretty uneventful. or maybe just in my memory, they were uneventful. I'm sure stuff happened. I do remember it was one of the last vacations that, like, my dad, my stepmom, me, Sarah, and Tyler, like, all went on together. Sarah was in college by this point. Tyler and I were in high school. He was dating, I'm not gonna say her name. So it had to have been the summer going into our senior year. Both of us. Sarah would have been going into her senior year of college. Tyler and I were going into our senior year of high school.
Okay.
And I just remember that trip because it was just it was kind of, you could feel that it was the end of an era.
Gotcha.
You could kind of feel that we were like, this is probably our last vacation that we're going on together as a family before, like, me and Tyler were about to graduate high school and all of that. And Sarah was about to graduate college. And by that point, Wes had long since stopped going on vacations with us. And so I remember, like, so me and Tyler are like 17 at this point. And I remember my dad kind of just being like, okay, when we're on this trip, y'all go do what you're going to do. Basically saying, kind of giving us permission, like, because we were cigarette smokers at this point. So me and Tyler were. So I think my dad's way of saying, like, go do what you're going to do. Just don't do it in front of us. Like, go do what you're... That's basically what he said. In his own way, that's what he said. And so that was kind of me and Tyler's cue to just be like, okay, all we have to do is just kind of stay out of their way. We know our parents so well. They're going to be on that beach all freaking day.
Oh, yeah.
And we can just go hang out by the pool. And that's what I like to do. That's what Tyler likes to do. Tyler has very fair skin, just like his mom, so he doesn't like being outside for too long. Shelly never got that memo. She had her big hat, and she had all the sunscreen, and she prepared herself. Tyler didn't want to do all that, so he didn't like being out in the sun for too long. And so me and Tyler are by the pool. We're not in the pool, like, we're not like in the pool area. We're like outside of the pool area. We're smoking cigarettes, and this is just another incident where we just had a rent-a-cop who just wanted to puff his chest out. And of course it's me and Tyler, so of course we're gonna get in trouble over some dumb bullshit. And he comes up to us, and we were inside of, like, the pool area, but we were, like, nowhere near the pool. We were actually in, like, the designated smoking area, because back in 2001, I'm pretty sure, like, everywhere is a designated smoking area, but there was no, like, no smoking allowed. There was none of that. And so he comes up to us, he's like, how old are y'all? And I kind of looked at him. I'm like, I knew he wasn't a cop. I knew, I was like, you're not a cop. At this point, unfortunately, I was pretty experienced with police officers. And I was like, yeah, this guy's not a cop. I was just like, and this was when I was full, unfiltered, full of attitude. Like, this is nothing like how I am now. I know I'm sassy and stuff, but, like, not anywhere to where I was when I was 17, when I really had a mouth on me. And he was just like, how old are y'all? I'm like, why does it matter to you? I said something like that. And he was just like, well, because you're smoking cigarettes, and you know, you have to be 18 to smoke cigarettes. So I'm like, okay, well, then I'm 18. And then he was just like, he's like, no, you're not. You look younger than 18. I was like, well, I'm 18. He was like, let me see your ID. And I was like, no. I was like, he was like, well, you know, I see you loitering around the pool. I'm like, there's no loitering around the pool. Like, we're in the pool area. We're hanging. I was like, I think I told him to f*** off. I'm pretty sure I told him to f*** off. I remember, like, this was, like, the pinnacle of me having a mouth on me. Like, and like I said, I know you think I'm sassy now, but just imagine teenage me when I was full of hormones. Cute. And completely unfiltered, and I was pretty hot. And he was just like, he pointed at Tyler. He was like, I saw you spit in the pool. And Tyler was like, no, I didn't. He was like, I pointed at Tyler. He was like, I saw you spit in the pool. And he was like, no, I didn't. And I was like, I remember at one point we were just like, look, we'll put out
half the people are peeing in the pool.
You ruined my punchline.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. No, but he was just kind of like, I think at one point I was like, we'll put out our cigarettes. We'll go away. Like, we'll go away. And he was just like, no, he really, I don't know what this fucking dude's problem was. I don't have to bleep out so much stuff in this episode. I don't know what this dude's problem was, but, like, he was just like, no, I'm going to are you staying at this hotel? And finally I was just like, yeah, we're staying here. I said something like that. And he was like, I'm bringing you back up to your room so I could talk to your parents. I'm like, I just remember being like, go away. Like, I just remember just wanting to like, go do something else. I mean, like, this was one of the few times in my life where I was ready to fight someone. I was like, and not even like, he was just making me so mad. And I remember him, and he kept talking about Tyler spitting in the pool. And I was just like, I don't know what you're so upset about. People pee in the pool all the time, and you're talking about spit. I was like, and then I said something I shouldn't have, but it was what culminated in him bringing us upstairs. I'm like, why don't you go get a real job? And then he was just like, all right, I'm bringing you upstairs, bring it out. I'm like, my dad just told us, go do what you're gonna do. Just don't do it in front of us, aka don't get in trouble. Thank God it was just Sarah. At the room, and my parents were already down at the beach. And so Sarah like answers the door, and like the security guard's like talking to my sister like she's like our guardian or something like that.
And of course Sarah's like 4'11". Yeah. So like she doesn't look any.
She's 5 feet tall. She's maybe 20. I would have been 17. She would have been 21 at the time. So like, yeah, what's she gonna do? And she doesn't care. So she's just kind of like, she's just sitting there being like, and then he leaves. And my sister just looks at us and she's like, y'all are idiots, you know? And so that was, and I don't think it was the three of us. We were like, blood oath. We're not telling my parents about this. Like,
until they hear this pod.
And they're never gonna listen to the pod, but it's okay.
I do have one more story. Is that it?
Yeah, that's it.
That is good. I love how it was Sarah that was there.
I was so lucky. It was the first time ever where I could be like, I got lucky, because usually I always had to be the example, and so I always had to be made an example of, and I always got caught. But this was the first time where I'm like looking up at the sky, thank you, you know.
So I did think of one more other beach story, and this one was pretty crazy. So my friend Donna in high school, she was a junior and I was a senior. Her family also invited me to go to the beach one summer, and so we went, and I think this was maybe after the summer I had gone with Jennifer and her family. So I kind of knew some of like the condos and where there might be like kids our age.
Yeah.
And so we had walked down like maybe 3 or 4 condos, which in Destin, it's kind of a long ways. I mean, you know, you think about how expansive like this condo space is. I mean, that's maybe like a quarter of a mile, maybe like half a mile, like down the beach.
Yeah.
And her mom was like really strict about like curfew. She was like, you'll need to be back by 11 o'clock because I'm going to worry about where y'all are. Because it gets dark on the beach. Yeah. I mean, there's like not a lot of lighting. So I get it. And so, but we were going to be good. Like we weren't drinking or doing anything. We just wanted to go find kids like our own age.
Yeah.
So it was around maybe like 10:30, 10:40. And we were like, all right, well, we have to give ourselves like 20 minutes to get back because that's how far down the beach we went. And so as we were walking back, all of a sudden she's like, oh my God, something just like sliced my foot open.
Oh God.
Because again, it's dark and we can't see.
Yep.
And so we like, she literally cannot walk. Like her foot is just like, we can't really see because it's totally pitch black on the beach. So I'm like trying to carry her. And by this point it's like 10:45, 10:50. And we've like barely made it like past a condo because she cannot walk. And by the time we actually get back to our condo, it is like 11:20, 11:30. I mean, maybe we had gone down a bit further than I'm saying, but it took us a while. During this time, she had called the police and had called my mom. And my mom was like, how in the hell would I know where they are? I'm in New Orleans. Like, you know, I'm sure they're not doing anything bad, you know, but maybe they just lost track of time if they don't have a watch on. So we get back to the condo and she's in the lobby. I think like the police had come and she's like, where have y'all been? And she's like, Mom, I can't walk. She's like, something is wrong. So I will actually just kind of laugh and say, thank God her foot was sliced open.
Yeah.
Because like it was kind of bleeding and you could see she had actually stepped on fish bone, like a dead fish that was on the beach. I don't know.
Yeah.
But like the bones, I guess, were like so sharp. They all went in her foot. Her foot was like I don't know the right words for it, but like slivered open, like it was sliced.
Yeah.
So we had to go to the emergency room.
Someone took a little tiny rake and just scraped it off.
Yes. I just kept thinking like if we had been like in different positions or 1 foot over to the left, or I don't remember what side I was on. It could have been me. We could have missed it. I remember like the cop gave us like an escort to the like Destin urgent care or ER or whatever. And so we were there until like 1 a.m. They had to give her like a tetanus shot and she got stitches and they were like, you really shouldn't go back to the beach. So we just like literally the rest of the trip like hung out at the pool. Like I would get in, but they were like, she does not need to get in because her foot like, you know, it's obviously really bad. But I will never forget that because she was like, I called your mom. And so I remember having to call my mom and she was like, what in the hell is going on? And I'm like, we were coming down the beach and we ended up in the ER and Donna's foot is like sliced open. She's like, oh, okay, as long as y'all weren't doing anything bad. Like I was going to be really upset that you went on this trip with this family and like ruin their trip or something. And I'm like, no, Mom, like, I could be good, but that was, I'll never forget seeing her foot in the light. Like it was just sliced. It was like Freddy Krueger.
That's what I was going to say, but I was just like, I thought of like a rake, like a little mini rake.
It just like Freddy Krueger took his hand and just sliced down her foot. So those are my beach trips.
Aww.
Fun times.
All right, you ready to get into this plot summary?
Let's do it.
All right. So this episode was, I don't even think it was a full 30 minutes. So this summary is pretty short, which is convenient because we've been talking for an hour.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Which happens. Like I said, this was not an episode where I thought we were going to be short of stories. So, all right. Togetherness, Family Day pilot summary. The series opens with Brett checking out his wife Michelle's boobs while she's sound asleep. When he tries to make the moves on her, she shoos him away. Brett then tries to take matters into his own hands, literally, only to be met with take it outside and the handing of the baby monitor from Michelle. So basically Michelle's like, you can go jack off, just don't do it in the bed.
Yes.
Cut to Brett's best bud Alex, a washed up wannabe actor, getting evicted and calling Brett in a panic. Alex tells Brett that this is the last straw and he's moving back home. After packing up the U-Haul, Brett, desperate for some guy time, begs Alex to stay one more day for family day at the beach despite his rock bottom situation and insistence that he's leaving LA and moving back home. Then there's Michelle's sister Tina, whom we meet while she's putting on the last of her clothes from her sexcapade from the night before with her quote-unquote boyfriend, Craig, played by Ken Marino, who I love. He is so funny.
I love him.
We find out that Tina is living in Houston and came out to LA to visit Craig, who, at least in his own mind, has made it big in LA. Craig shares that leaving Houston was the best decision he ever made. Tina begins to imply that she wants to move to LA to start her new life with Craig's new life, and it's very clear that Craig isn't the least bit interested in Tina, and she doesn't seem to get it. Yeah, I just remember that whole scene. I'm like, girl, he is just not that into you.
Correct.
It's very clear Tina is lost, and I think we can all relate to that at some point in our lives. Tina joins up with the other three characters. Alex and Tina show an immediate chemistry with each other, but don't necessarily see it themselves. They all go to the beach together, and Michelle is excited for her and Brett to bring their baby into the ocean for the first time. Once they are at the beach, Michelle is disheartened when Alex takes the baby into the ocean with Brett, which, it sucked, but I was just kind of like...
I wanted to just be like, get up and go,
that's
like, take the baby.
Kind of what I was thinking, too. I was just like, go be a part of the experience. He doesn't know, and he did it, like, without Brett really being there to say anything, so, like... Yeah, but I mean, like, I get it, but like those, they're not, the baby's gonna have no memory of that. The memory is just for the parent, which is fine. You want to have those memories, but When they return home from the beach, Michelle says she's going upstairs to take a nap. Brett walks in on her a little later, masturbating while reading 50 Shades of Grey with clothespins on her nipples.
Oh
that
my
was
God.
so funny.
Wow, yes.
This ignites a fight between the two, but it's interrupted by a blood-curdling scream coming from Tina. Craig has dumped her via text message. Brett and Michelle decide to let Alex and Tina come along with them on their date night. All four need to get out of the house and go be adults for a little while without kids, which to all the parents out there who have young kids, y'all need that. Y'all need to go out and be adults and be away from your kids. I would say once a week. I know that's probably not possible for everyone, but knowing so many of our friends and over the years that have kids, and yeah, it's just you need to go out, you need to go ahead and have fun and remember that you're an adult. While at dinner, the four start having fun and letting loose. That is until Tina spots Craig with another woman. Tina confronts Craig only for him to start insulting her, and that's when Alex interjects and saves Tina from being embarrassed. Alex and Tina start getting pumped up and convince Brett and Michelle to buy a bunch of toilet paper and TP's Craig's house, which is really funny because he didn't have any trees in his front yard, so they were kind of having to improvise. They figured it out. But
they got it. Yeah. I mean, it was great.
The fun and spontaneous night lights a fire between Brett and Michelle, and the two start enjoying themselves. Later that night, Brett asks a tipsy Michelle why she doesn't want to have sex with him. Michelle simply replies with, "I don't know." Meanwhile, downstairs, Alex and Tina begin to argue about their sleeping situation. Alex implies that he's second-guessing moving back home, as is Tina. Now it seems that the two are staying at Brett and Michelle's indefinitely, and this could be the beginning of a new friendship or relationship. End of episode. That was really brief. I mean, but that was honestly, I think the only thing I left out was that Tina decided at some point during the episode that she wasn't going to leave LA.
Yeah.
And that she was going to stay there. I don't remember when that happened, but yeah, I kind of had to rewatch the episode and type as I was rewatching it. So, yeah, the show's really cute. I mean, obviously the cast is great. I mean, they're awesome. 16 episodes. It's on Max. Watch
30 minutes each.
30 minutes each. It's really funny.
Could watch it in a day.
Oh yeah, easily. All right, you think that wraps up? You think that wraps up this one?
I think it does.
All right, that wraps up this episode. Thanks for tuning in, and if you haven't already, go ahead and follow us on whichever platform you're listening to this podcast on. That way, you'll be notified every time we publish a new episode. You can also follow us on Instagram at WeJudgePilotPod. We're also on Facebook. Almost forgot to say that. Leave us a comment, suggest a show for us to watch, or leave some emojis in the comments. What you got?
I got a few. I have the heart. I have the baby. I have the melons to represent the boobies. The beach, the toilet paper, and the house. A movie camera, since Alex is an actor. The van to represent the moving van. The waves and the sun for the ocean. The sleep emoji. The scream emoji. The phone, and the dinner plate. All right, well, we are going to head out, but we'll talk to you soon. Thanks for listening.